Alright guys, BLM here, back with a new video, and in this video we're back with another Survivor video, and this time I'll be talking about my favorite episodes from every season of the show. So with that, I'll be going through every season of Survivor US and talking about the episode that I personally enjoy the most out of the bunch. Now really the only true rule here is the fact that I'm not going to be including reunions in this list, which to be fair doesn't play that major a factor. I think there's probably only one season, that being All Stars, that I would say the reunion is maybe better than the rest of the season, but either way that is a rule I stuck to here. So with that, let's run through every season, starting off with Survivor Borneo, where here this was a pretty easy answer in my eyes. Again, while I think the merger is definitely an episode to consider along with the Jenna boot, I do feel like the definitive answer for me is the finale, the final four, which is an episode that I think is probably the best Survivor episode for a while in Survivor history following this. I think it is a truly elite finale in Survivor history, one that starts off with a pretty interesting vote of a 2-2 tie between Sue and Rich, with Kelly flipping for like no reason. I mean, the entire final immunity challenge is really great, with Rich stepping off, and you have Jeff seemingly piecing together the game, along with Rudy's simple mistake that causes him to lose there. And then we get Final Tribal, which is also a truly elite one that obviously culminates in the Snakes and Rats speech, and also gives us Richard beating Kelly at the end. I feel like there's so many great moments across this finale that makes this for sure the best episode from the season. Next up from Australian Outback, and again, I've been pretty open how much I don't love this season, and through that, I do feel like finding the best episode from it is a bit rough. I do think something like the Mitchell boot stands out. Trial by Fire, the Scoop In Medevac, is an episode that is pretty commonly stated as one of the better episodes. However, I think for me, I'm going to pick the merge here, episode 7. Obviously, the episode where they merge, as I do feel like it's the episode that sticks out to me the most. While it might not be fundamentally the best episode, I do think when I think of Australian Outback, this is probably the episode that sticks out the most to me. An episode that has this 5-5 vote at Tribal, where Varner gets taken out by the tiebreaker. We also have a pretty notable immunity challenge of the Perch, where Tina throws at the last second to give it to Keith, which is a great strategic move there. Well, also we have Varner stepping down for peanut butter. We have Alicia stepping down at the last second for like no reason. We have like Colby openly acting like a dick to throw off the Kuchas. I mean, I think there's a lot of like notable little moments there. And also we get the fun opening to the episode where the men and women get together separately, but thinking instead that they're going to be with the opposite sex of the other tribe. And through that, it leads to some humor. So again, I feel like there's enough notable moments here for this to be my favorite episode. Next up for Africa, and this one was a bit tough, as I feel like there are 3 episodes here that really stick out to me. You got the premiere, which I think has this really interesting storyline of Clarence and Diane. You got the twist, the first ever swap episode, which obviously is a pretty iconic episode, and even beyond that is a pretty good episode for Ethan and shows how he's playing the game. But the episode I'm going to go with here is episode 9, Smoking Out the Snake, the episode after the merge where Lex goes on his witch hunt, which all culminates in the eventual vote off of Kelly Goldsmith. But even beyond that, this is a great episode in the fact that this is the first time in Survivor history where it felt like a flip after the merge was actually feasible. Where if it wasn't for Brandon, this vote against Lex almost goes through. Mind you, I think the presentation of the vote is not as good as it could have been, especially the fact that they literally show Brandon's vote before the vote reveal, which is really dumb. But I think as a whole, this is definitely a major standout in the season, where again, it was between this and the twist, but I did decide to go with this one instead. Next up for Marquesas, and this is another one. I think there's a good chunk of episodes to consider here. I mean, I considered the Hunter boot, that obviously being like the first time this big alpha male gets taken out super early in the game. You have the End of Innocence, episode 5, the episode where Gabe goes home, where that's a lot of crazy stuff going on there. I didn't pick what is probably one of the more important episodes in Survivor history, that being Jury's Out, the episode where the flip against the Road to 4 ends up occurring. And again, a lot of that comes down to the presentation of it not being as great as I would have personally liked. And I also considered the finale, which did not end up making the cut. So while it is a very strong episode for sure, with the Pascal rock draw, Vesepia flipping on Kathy, I still feel like there's some pretty tedious content in the middle of like a whole bunch of arts and crafts, and then at the end, the final tribal is not the most riveting in the world. So my answer here ends up being episode 7, True Lies, the merge episode, which I've always personally really liked. It is this kind of downfall downfall for Boston Rob. Again, when watching Marquesas, Boston Rob is still my favorite character from this season. I do feel like overall his arc across the season is a really fun one to watch, and this being his downfall, it has these really notable moments of him trying to flirt with Kathy, and then him getting into this confrontation with John in the middle of the camp, and Sean getting in on it too. We also have him playing around during the immunity challenge that gets him DQ'd. Like, I feel like there's enough good moments there to make this the episode that stands out for me. Next up for Thailand, this one's tough as, again, like there's not that many good episodes here, where for me it really came down to 2 episodes, and the episode I didn't pick was episode 3, Family Values, and a lot of that's just because of the ickiness of the Ted and Gandia stuff, where it's just simply not fun to watch. I mean, while that's also the episode of the attack zone, and we got like Sukchai throwing the challenge, voting out Jed, like all that's really great. It's just that we also get the Ted and Gandia stuff. So instead I went with episode 7, Assumptions, the episode of the fake merge, where Xian gets taken out after deciding to flip on her Sukchais. Again, a very solid episode as well. I would say I think probably there's higher highs in episode 3, but I feel like this episode obviously is void of ickiness. And to me, episode 7 is the episode that has the next highest high, and that being the fake merge reveal. So that's why I picked it here. Now for the Amazon, I feel like this one is pretty tough as there's a good chunk of good episodes here. Obviously, a lot of people mentioned the Roger episode, Girls Gone Wilder, which is a good episode. However, I always felt like it was a bit overstated. For me, the true contenders here are The Chain, the Dina boot, Q&A, the Alex boot, and Sour Grapes, the Christy boot. Obviously, that 3-episode stretch is some of the best Survivor that's out there, and I personally went with Sour Grapes, the Christy boot, mainly because, again, with the Dina boot and the Alex boot, those are both like really, really important episodes, especially Q&A. However, I feel like Sour Grapes here is a step above it in the fact that, one, we also get the aftermath of all of that. We get to see the reaction to the Alex vote, with Jenna being really upset and getting into a fight with Rob. But also, we still get a pretty important vote in Survivor history, the vote off of Christy, this vote where Rob takes out the swing vote. And while I think the Alex vote is probably the more fun individual vote off, I do feel like it's the combination of the Christy vote off and then also the reaction to the Alex vote off that makes this episode a step better, because that I did pick it here. And now for Survivor Pearl Islands, where here we do have a decent amount of contenders here. I mean, the premiere is a notable great episode with the stuff in the village and obviously introducing us to all the great characters. We get episode 4, which has Drake throwing the immunity challenge to take out Burton, and that's a great storyline. What If Part 1, the reveal of the Outcast twist, and also the Austin quit is a great episode as well. I mean, What If Part 2 is also pretty strong. The Merge episode, where Burton and Lil return to the game and Savage gets taken out. Episode 10, the Rupert Boot episode, is one that has always stuck in my mind as one of the strongest episodes of the season. However, the episode I decided to go with here is episode 11, The Great Lie. Obviously, the episode where we get the family visit, where we do get the dead grandma lie from Johnny Fairplay, making him an iconic character. But even beyond that, we do get some great other moments throughout this episode as well. While it does all lead up to a Tawana boot, which is kind of underwhelming, the path there is really great. I mean, we do start off with the ramifications of the Rupert boot, with seeing Krista getting accused of dumping all the fish, only for it to later be revealed that was Sandra instead. We also get Sandra flipping Tawana and Dara on Burton by sneaking off in the middle of the night and listening in on conversation between John and Burton. We also have the immunity challenge, where Burton is initially declared the winner, only for Jeff to later revoke that due to him misspelling a word, and that's a really notable thing as well. Again, I do feel like there's a lot of notable moments in this episode, along with the fact that we do get this last second flip from Fairplay flipping over Krista and Sandra at the last second to save Burton, and all that's really great. So again, that is my pick here. Next up for All Stars, and I mean, I have to pick one. I mean, again, like as a whole, my opinion of All Stars has definitely gone down over time. For me, the only true contenders here were the premiere, because it was at least cool to see these people back. Episode 3 can be talked about as a good episode because it does have Rupert's shelter, and that's funny, but again, it doesn't lead to a vote off, which has always been kind of a major sticking point for me. So I decided to go with Angers, Tears, and Chaos, the Merge episode, where we get this massive downfall for Lex, where obviously we get the culmination of this Rob and Lex deal that ends up being a major talking point in Survivor history. I mean, this is such an iconic moment, and one of my favorite scenes in Survivor history is this Rob sitting Lex down and telling him that he's not gonna help him. Like, it's such an iconic scene to me, and that's the reason why it's my pick here. Next up for Vanuatu, and I'll be honest, no episode from Vanuatu like really stuck out to me. I mean, episode 2 I remember being very strong. This Dolly boot, which has her like blowing up her game despite being the swing. Also, the Merge is a pretty notable episode to me. especially with how much gravitas is put on to the eventual vote off. However, I decided to go with episode 11, Surprise and Surprise Again, which is the Leanne vote, which is really like the big moment of the season, the big flip that happens on the majority where Scout and Twyla pick up Chris, who picks up Eliza, and they flip the game on Leanne. And again, it is a great moment. And throughout, you still have like Chris still thinking he's about to be the next boo, and you have the loved ones visit with Lori coming in and her being so upset, the fact that she didn't help Chris win immunity, and like those are notable things about this episode as well. So I felt like that was enough to make it my pick here. Next up for Palau, and Palau is one that I think there's a definitive answer for me. Obviously, you have episodes like I Will Not Give Up, the merge episode where Stephanie ends up being alone. You have episodes like We'll Make You Pay, the episode where Greg gets blindsided. It Could All Backfire, the penultimate episode. But I feel like for me, the definitive answer here is the finale, The Ultimate Shock, which is an all-time great finale in my eyes. Again, this entire downfall for Ian across most of it is just fantastic TV. Also mixing that the fact that Tom essentially just bulldozes his way to the final two with him winning obviously the iconic Baba Booey challenge. Like there's so much great stuff there. For me, it was a solid pick here. Next for Guatemala, and Guatemala's another one of these seasons that I don't think there's a super solid answer. I mean, Guatemala's like kind of a season of a lot of like small great moments, but there's not really a like massive great moment. Like for me, I mean, episode 6 stands out. The episode where Judd at Tribo goes on his ADD spiel. We have episodes 8 and 9, which have great content based around the hidden immunity idol and Gary finding and playing it and Judd lying about it, and like all that's fantastic as well. However, I did go with episode 12, Price for Immunity, the eventual Judd boot, the episode where Danny and her winning storyline starts to become more in the forefront of her winning the advantage at the auction that gives her immunity despite being on the bottom, and then the entire flip on Judd, despite earlier in the episode, we have the family visit where Stephanie promises Judd's wife that she'll look after him. Like, all that's really, really great. Again, good content there. Decided to make it my pick. Next up for Panama. And Panama's a season that I think most of the season's just kind of fine. However, there are these really big standout episodes. I mean, you got For Cod's Sake, the Bob Dog boot episode, which is just a lot of insane stuff going on there. You have Medical Emergency, the Bruce Medevac, which is a really, really funny episode. The problem is that, again, like there's no vote off, which has always kind of been a sticking point for me. Call the Wambulance is a really fun episode as well. This Final Four round where we also, again, don't end it with elimination. That's kind of a sticking point there, though we get the culmination of this Ars Terry rivalry, and that's really fun. However, for me, I mean, the answer is episode 12, Perilous Scramble, the episode with the 3-2-1, where Sri orchestrates this plurality vote to take out Courtney, realizing that Courtney is a number that's going to be dragged to the end. Like a really fun strategy episode here. One that really highlights Suri as a character, because that for me, it was my pick here. Next up for Cook Islands, and to me, this was not that close. I mean, you could mention Plan Voodoo as a pretty fun episode, particularly around everything Cowboy's doing. Mutiny is obviously a great episode that really propels the overall storyline of the season, but the definitive answer for me is Why Would You Trust Me? The Merge episode where Penner ends up flipping against the majority, with Yul showing him his idol. Really this episode that really solidifies Yul's later win, while also really propelling Penner's storyline on the season as well, of him being this rat. That, I mean, the following episode itself is also really great. You do get a lot of the fallout to this, though again, I think the actual vote off is obviously more interesting in this episode with Nate being completely blindsided and all that's really fun. So again, for me, this was the pick. Next up for Fiji, and again, this one's not that close. Again, there's other good episodes. I mean, Are We Gonna Live on Exile Island? The Michelle Yee boot, that's really fun. You've got that Puzzled Look. The finale is fantastic as well with the Yao and Dreams of it all. However, I mean, the definitive answer is It's a Turtle. Episode 10, the Edgardo boot. I mean, an all-time great vote off there. A lot of fun scrambling as well with Dreams flipping against the Four Horsemen and them creating the idea of voting for a safe vote to avoid an idol, and we have the downfall of the Horsemen where they play their idol incorrectly. All that's really fun. Really great vote off. Easy answer there. And next up for China, and for me, China is a tough season to pick here, where I think the thing about China is that it is consistently great. However, there's not really many major highlights in terms of episodes. I mean, obviously you have things like the merge round where Jamie plays her fake idol. You have episode 11, Ready to Bite the Apple, where we finally get the James blindside, 2 idols in his pocket. However, for me, I decided to go with episode 5, Love is in the Air, the swap episode where Aaron essentially gets screwed. To which, obviously, like from a game integrity standpoint, obviously it's bad. They essentially just automatically swap screwed a person. However, I do think it made for great TV. Like, I do love that tribal where James essentially essentially fighting with PG over the morality of throwing the challenge, along with the fact that PG and Jamie do throw the challenge in a really overt way. That's also super funny. Like, I do think there's good stuff there for me. I think it made for great TV, so it's my pick. Next up for Micronesia, and again, so many great episodes here. I mean, the premiere, You Guys Are Dumber Than You Look, really fun episode, really great character piece on Fair Play. We get episode 9, I'm in Such a Hot Pickle, the merge episode where Eliza plays the fake idol. That's really fun. Obviously, you get the Eric blindside, and If It Smells Like a Rat, Give It Cheese. All-time great vote off there. However, for me, the answer is episode 10, I Promise. The episode with the Aussie vote off, which is obviously fantastic there, really iconic vote off. However, even beyond that, to me, it has one of my favorite immunity challenges in Survivor history. This Rains It Pours challenge, where Parvati ends up beating Jason, with Jason deciding to throw it at the last second, with everyone promising to keep him safe if he does, which is ridiculous. But even beyond that, we have fun character moments throughout it, with a big notable one for me being when James drops after gloating at other people dropping, so that's fun. But again, for me, it was a definitive pick here. Next up for Gabon, and again, there's some contenders here. I've always liked the premiere of Gabon. I think it has a solid premiere, despite it not being the most riveting gameplay wise. We have episode 6, It All Depends on the Pinup Girl, the episode where Ace gets voted out, and that's really fun, along with the fact that you get Susie telling Corinne that she was going to vote her out. Again, that's really fun content. You get Apple in the Garden of Eden, the episode where Marcus gets sniped out of the game. That's fantastic as well. However, for me, the answer is episode 9, Nothing Tastes Better Than $500, the Randy boot episode, where again, all this is a fantastic downfall for Randy, but here we also get some really iconic moments. Moments like Sugar refusing Randy's cookie and then taking it just to give it to Maddie. That's all really fun. Obviously, Randy's vote out has these iconic voting confessionals from Sugar and especially Crystal. Then we have the fake idol of it all. Like, I mean, again, there's a lot good here. Really fun episode. It's my pick for Gabon. Next up for Tocantins, and again, some decent picks here. Episodes 9 and 10 are both very good. The episode where Brendan gets voted out, and also the episode where Tyson gets voted out, both very strong. However, I decided to go with episode 13, The Martyr Approach. Essentially the Coach episode, the episode where Coach goes home, also the episode where Coach goes to Exile Island and pretends to be this Christ figure, and we have him hamming it up at the immunity challenge. Like, I mean, there's so much great Coach content throughout this episode, to where, while I've always found this episode to probably be a bit overrated, it's still a fantastic episode. So because that's my pick here. Next up, Samoa. And again, this one has some solid picks here. I mean, you got the premiere, which is this massive showcase of Russell Hantz as a villain. That's a fantastic episode. You also have the episode surrounding the merge, episode 8. The Eric Cardona boot is a really crazy vote. Of episode 10, the episode where Russell fully flips the game and takes out Laura Moret. However, for me, I decided to go with Tastes Like Chicken, episode 9, which is the episode where Russell idols Kelly out of the game. And really for me, it was between episodes 9 and 10, because again, like 10 essentially has the ramifications of this, along with this other really fun idol hunt, and also a pretty big vote. However, for me, episode 9 is really the episode that I think of when I think of this season. I think of Russell finding this immunity idol under the bridge while everyone else is on reward. I think of this dilemma for Russell on who he's going to play the idol on. I also remember the Shambo Laura of it all, where initially in the episode, Shambo was going to flip to take out Laura at the beginning of this episode, only for Laura to win immunity and stop that plan. So again, it feels like there's a lot going on in this episode, so because of that, for me, I made it my pick here. Next up for Heroes versus Villains, and again, obviously there's two massive standouts. I mean, I think there's other great episodes. Tonight We Make Our Move, the Suri boot's fantastic. I'm Not a Good Villain, the Rob boot is fantastic as well. Jumping Ship, the episode where Amanda gets voted out, and we have her fight with Danielle, and also Sandra wanting to flip. Like, that's all great. Even A Sinking Ship, I mean, people seem to be low on the post-merge of Here's Villains. However, I always found that to be a fascinating episode as well, where first Candace gets voted out, but then also Russell flips on Danielle. However, obviously the two main episodes here are Banana Etiquette and Going Down in Flames. Banana Etiquette being the episode where Tyson votes himself out, or Going Down in Flames, the episode where JT gets taken out of the game. And these are too close. I mean, these are two of the best episodes of all time. I personally went with Banana Etiquette, though. I feel like for me, I think of Banana Etiquette more than Going Down in Flames. Now, Going Down in Flames might technically be a better episode, especially because there's more time to breathe in that episode, to where Banana Etiquette obviously has more tribal. This episode that has two tribals, and through that, there's not as much camp life in that episode, though, again, it's an episode that really sticks out to me. I remember, even from the hero side of things, the James trying to race against JT, and then him also calling Colby Superman in a fat suit. Obviously, the Tyson and Russell of it all is all fantastic as well. Again, it's a very, very close race. However, for me personally, I did go with Banana Etiquette. Next up for Nicaragua. And Nicaragua is kind of in this ballpark of like a season that is like consistently fine. However, I don't think there's like a massive standout episode amongst it all. I mean, I consider episode 6, the episode where Marty doesn't play his idol against Kelly B. I considered episode 9, the eventual Marty vote off. Also, episode 12, despite a lot of people talking about this as a bad episode, I've always found this to be riveting TV. The episode where Purple Kelly and Bianca quit. I always found it interesting to watch. However, the episode I did go with here is one of the earliest episodes I end up picking here, and that is episode 2, Fatigue Makes Cowards of Us All, which is the Shannon vote off, which, again, Shannon is an unlikable person and does say some icky things here. However, I do think it made for great TV, the fact that this all leads up to his eventual downfall, with his own alliance seemingly flipping on him by the time he goes out. But even beyond that, we have this great rivalry on the Espada tribe of Marty versus Jimmy Johnson, with Marty really becoming a standout character during this episode. But even beyond that, we have Holly's breakdown, where Holly steals Dan's shoes and sinks them out of water, and that's fantastic as well. Again, there's some great stuff in this episode, which is why it's my pick. Next up for Redemption Island, and what do you know? Most of the contenders for this season are the first few episodes. Again, episodes 1, 2, and 3 are all really strong episodes in my eyes. However, I did also consider the Merge episode as well, as you have the Met Elrod boot for the second time. That's a fantastic episode. However, the episode I end up going with here is the premiere, the only time I go for premiere across this entire list. However, again, this premiere is fantastic. It really is. I mean, it is an episode that has this Philip and Francesca rivalry that really culminates at Tribal. That's fantastic to watch. We have Boston Rob already playing circles around everybody, but despite that, not really hogging up the screen time, with it's mostly people talking about him, which I think makes it a step better. Also, we get the setup for the Russell downfall already in this premiere. Like, we get so much great stuff in this premiere to where the Merge episode was definitely in consideration as well. However, this is the one I went with here. Next up for South Pacific, and this is one that surprisingly had a decent amount of contenders here. I had episode 5, the Elise boot, which I thought was a pretty fun blindside. Trojan Horse, the episode where Ozzy decides to go through the plan of throwing himself into Redemption Island. Episode 13, the episode where Brandon gives up immunity and proceeds to be voted out. The finale is fantastic. This downfall for Ozzy and also this downfall for Coach. However, the episode I end up going with here is the Merge episode, Double Agent, the episode where Cochran flips against the Savaii and votes out Keith on the revote. Again, a really, really great vote off. This really great episode for Coach as well, with this probably being Coach's best gameplay across his entire career. And the fact that we mix that in, the fact that we have like Ozzy trying to lie about being voted out and Cochran's entire dilemma, I feel like for me, this was the easy pick here. Next up for One World, and this is another season that, again, there's not like a major standout in this, so you have episodes like Bum Puzzle, which has the men giving up immunity to go tribal, though again, you do get some ickiness with Colton stuff to where I didn't pick that. Episodes 9 and 10 I thought were pretty good as well. These episodes where Troyzan's on the bottom, and episode 9 having the eventual J vote, which is probably one of the bigger votes of the season, and then episode 10 is the This Is My Island episode, which I know people don't like as it's almost all Troyzan. However, I always found it personally fun. Episode 12, the Cat Boot, is also a really fun episode, especially with the family visit there as well, but I decided to go with the Merge episode, The Beauty in a Merge, an episode that I just found so funny the last time I watched it. And again, this is probably purely recency bias, as is the most recent episode One World I have watched. However, when I did that Merge episode ranking, I just found this episode so funny, with like everything going on at Tarzan and his rivalry with Jonas, and Jonas trying to blow things up on his way out. And I just found this to be a really, really fun episode, so that's my pick. Next up for Philippines, and again, there's some decent picks here. I've always liked the premiere. Survivor smacked me in the chops, obviously having the Zayn boot, but also setting up this great storyline for Russell. We have the downfall of Russell and create a little chaos. Really great episode there. The Merge episode is really great, with Penner using his idol and RC getting taken out. Hell Hath Frozen Over, the eventual Penner vote off, is really great as well. However, for me, the pick ended up being episode 8, Dead Man Walking, the Jeff Kent vote out, which really just feels like the high point of the season. The point where, while someone in the minority does get voted out, it really has a lot of crazy stuff going around it, from Malcolm being targeted by Lisa, and Malcolm and Abby both pulling out their idols. We have Jeff Kent getting taken out in a plurality vote, with Penner messing up the vote. It's also an episode that has some really fun scrambling beforehand, along with Penner having won immunity in a position where he really needed it. So again, there's so much great stuff here. So for me, I made it my pick. Next up for Caramoan, and Caramoan's one that I feel like there's a pretty definitive answer. I mean, you can consider it a premiere, which again, Francesca getting voted out again is pretty funny. Blindside Time, the merge episode is pretty good as well. Off that is Snake, the episode where Malcolm ends up getting the idol from Reynolds and playing it for himself. That's really fun. Beginning of the End, the episode where Andrew gets blindsided is pretty good as well. Don't Say Anything About My Mom, the Brenda vote off is obviously a very emotional one. However, for me, the episode that really stands out over time is Zipping Over to Cuckoo's Nest. The episode that culminates in the Three Amigos tribal, where Philip gets idled out of the game. But also before that, you still have this great scrambling from Malcolm finding an idol in front of the entire tribe. And just as a whole, feels like a really iconic episode. Definitely one of the most memorable episodes from my time immediately after getting back into Survivor. So because that for me, I made it my pick here. Next up from Blood versus Water. And again, there's not really a debate here. I mean, there are other good episodes, like episode 4, where Brad Culpepper gets flipped on and gets taken out of the game there. Skin of My Teeth, the merge episode's pretty solid. Gloves Come Off, the Caleb boot episode's pretty good. But I mean, it's obviously going to be Russell Feathers, the Rock Draw episode, where, I mean, that to this day is still one of my all-time favorite tribals. I mean, seeing this fight between Hayden and Tyson, Jervis, and Monica for Sierra's vote, it was really great. And Sierra eventually ended up flipping on Tyson. Was great TV. Seeing them go to Rocks, all really fun to watch. But also mixing that, again, there's fun character moments, especially the Russell Feathers moment, which again, adds levity to this episode as well, to where it is my pick. Next for Cagayan, and this is a season that some of my favorite episodes of all time come from this episode. I mean, episode 1, the premiere, is an all-time great episode, where the entire story of Garrett and him being blindsided after Chatia dumped out the rice is just fantastic. Swap episode where Cliff goes home's pretty good. Mad Treasure Hunt, the Morgan boot that has this like massive idol hunt right before that, was really fun TV. The LJ blindside was really, really incredible at the time. Straw That Broke the Camel's Back is probably an all-time great episode as well. Again, some insane character moments throughout it, particularly around this Tony Cass rivalry, and also Cass and Trish, all really great. However, still to this day, my all-time favorite Survivor episode is probably Head of the Snake, episode 6, the Sarah blindside. For sure my favorite tribal of all time, where there's just so many things going on in that Sarah blindside. But even beyond that, again, you get this great downfall for Sarah, who really just comes off extremely cocky throughout the entire thing, calling herself the president. And then we get this setup of the Cass-Sarah rivalry, and for that to all culminate in Cass being the one that flips against the majority, and 2 idols being flushed at that tribal. It was all great TV. Again, a really insane episode in my eyes, so it is my pick here. Next for Juan del Sur, and again, there's some pretty good picks here. And one of my favorite pre-merge episodes is We're a Hot Mess, the Drew Christie vote off, to where that was in consideration. The Jeremy blindside episode, again, the Crunch Time, is also one of my favorite blindsides of all time. The finale has the Baylor vote off, which is incredible. Again, just the rest of the finale is not as consistent, but the John Mish blindside's great. But like, my pick here ends up being episode 10, This Is Where We Build Trust, which is the episode where Wes Nail gets idled out of the game, where we get this really insane tribal to where there was this planned 4-3-2 vote against John, to where Keith Nail says, stick to the plan, that ruins everything, and 2 idols get played there to lead to the West vote. But then even beyond that, we get this great immunity challenge. That has a number of funny moments, from Wes talking about how many chicken nuggets he can eat. We get Wes also asking Jeff about his 2.5 Men appearance. We have Nally spitting, only for that spit to land on her shirt. Again, like, there's funny moments there. And there also being the reaction to the Jeremy blindside as well. Again, this is just a really, really great episode, so it's my pick. Next for Worlds Apart, and again, another one that has a decent chunk of episodes for consideration. I mean, episode 2 has always been a favorite episode of mine. It Will Be Revenge, the episode where Vince Sly gets taken out in a 3-2-1 with Will flipping at the last second. The Lines Will Be Drawn, the merge episode, is fantastic, where Kelly gets idled out of the game. Survivor Russian Roulette is a great episode where Mike plays from the bottom and tries to save Shireen. However, for me, the episode that I'm picking here is Bring the Popcorn, episode 10, the final 9 episode, the episode where Mike ends up making the move at the auction that ends up blowing up his game, and we see the ramifications of all that here. Also, here we have Will blowing up his game and lashing out at Shireen, where we get the moment of her raising her hand. And really, this is also just the start of the Mike win trajectory of him playing from the bottom and winning challenges to get his way to the end. So again, overall, I do think this is a pretty great episode, so I made it my pick. Next up for Cambodia, and here, again, there's a few considerations. Episode 6, the Woo Boot, I thought was a pretty good episode, seeing Spencer and Cass work together. You Call Will Hall, the Kelly Wentworth idol play to take out Savage was pretty great. Episodes 10 and 11, this great double episode that has Kiera getting idled out of the game, and beyond that we have Steven's Blindside, which is a big moment for a season. However, for me, my favorite episode is still the finale, Lie, Cheat, and Steal. And one of the all-time great finales in my eyes, one that does start with the No Votes Tribal, which is obviously incredible, and following that we get this underdog run from Wentworth, only for her to fall short, and it all culminates in Jeremy's eventual win. Again, a really great storyline in the finale here that also has an all-time great tribal within it, so because that's my pick. Next for Kaoh Rong, and this one is a bit tough, as I do feel like there are 3 big considerations for me. Episode 2 is the episode I've always loved, the Jennifer Lanzetti vote off, to where she goes crazy at tribal, and that's pretty fun. However, the 2 big episodes for me are episodes 9 and 10, the Debbie boot and the Scott boot, where I think most people would pick episode 10, where Scott gets voted out with Ty refusing to give him the idol. However, for me personally, I'm going to go with episode 9. It's psychological warfare, the Debbie vote off, which to me has always been an all-time favorite vote off, where again, it's a pretty insane 4-3-2 vote off, where Debbie kind of gets sniped out of the game there by her own alliance, in a position where the guys put on a show at tribal with their idols. However, before that, though, we do have the storyline of Julia, where Aubrey wants to take out Julia, or only Julia to win immunity and stop that plan. And then beyond that, we do have some great scrambling of Aubrey having to win back Julia. And again, I think all this is really great. For me, this is a truly elite episode of the show, and because that is my pick here. Next up for Millennials versus Gen X here. Again, we get some good considerations. I mean, I Will Destroy You, the penultimate episode before the merge, where Michaela gets blindsided, is pretty great. Still Throwing Punches, the Taylor vote off, is a really fun character piece there on Taylor, while also having some good character stuff from Adam. About to Have a Rumble is a pretty great episode where Will Wall flips on Zeke, and we do get this great Dodo edit for Ken along the way as well. I'm Going for $1 Million. The finale is a fantastic finale as well. Almost nonstop action there with this very satisfying storyline culminating in Adam's win. However, I do feel like the best episode is $1 Million Gamble, which is obviously the episode that culminates in Jessica's rock draw. An all-time great tribal there. Again, so much chaos going on, so much bickering going on there. We had the start of the Zeke-David rivalry, which is a lot of fun. Now, my only hesitation here is the fact that this is a 2-hour episode. Technically, it is the Chris boot and the Jessica boot. However, they're both named $1 Million Gamble, to where I'm considering them as one. And again, the first half isn't nearly as strong as the second half, though the second half is so strong, to where again, for me, I do have to still pick it here. Next for Game Changers, and what do you know? The only considerations are early episodes. Again, I considered the premiere, this Downfall for Tony is a really interesting storyline in my eyes. Episode 4 is this fantastic episode as well that I think probably most people would have picked. This JT vote off that has some good character moments from Michaela and from Sandra along the way. However, for me, I personally still go with episode 3, Tables Have Turned, the episode with the joint tribal twist where Malcolm gets idled out of the game. Just again, another all-time great tribal. Just so much going on there. And with that, all the culminating this downfall for Malcolm, who really feels like he was sniped out of the game there. It really is an interesting storyline to me. So because I did make that my pick. Now for HHH. And here again, I think you have a few considerations. You have the Alan Ball vote off, which is a personal favorite vote off to me, though didn't quite make it on. The finale is a pretty great storyline, though at the end of the day, again, I do find myself still underwhelmed with the fact that Ben gets saved by the fire-making twist, where I think it would have been a much better story if he was the fallen angel. I also consider episode 10, the episode where JP and Joe get voted out back-to-back in this 2-parter. Though really, for me, the definitive answer here is the final 7 episode, Not Gonna Roll Over and Die, the episode where Ben finally starts his underdog trajectory, having to play an idol to save himself, being the sole vote to take out Lauren, being this massive downfall for Lauren as well, who had been propped up as a serious contender to win beforehand. The entire tribal just being a really crazy one, with Dr. Mike throwing her idol in the fire, and really just ends up completely shaping up the entire trajectory of the season. So because of that, for me, I did pick it for HHH. Next up for Ghost Island, and again, a lot of early episodes were in consideration here. Again, I thought the premiere was pretty solid, this downfall for Jacob Derwin. Episode 2 is this great blind side of Morgan that ends up leaving Dominic and Wendell on the outs. Episode 4 ends up having this really fun play from Michael Yerger at Tribal and him trying to trick the Navides into thinking he has 2 idols. The finale is also an episode I considered, obviously leading to the first ever tie at Final Tribal, but even beyond that, we had the final 6 round where Dom pretends he has an idol, and that's really fun. Though for me, the episode, and it's really supported by the fact that when I rewatched this episode not too long ago, I did really adore it, and that is Fear Keeps You Sharp. The Merge episode, this massive downfall for Chris Noble that is just so fun to watch. Like, Chris Noble acting like he's completely running a game when in reality Wendell and Dominic are running circles around him, and he has this idol that's only good for 2 rounds, and he still decides to not play it despite him knowing that Dominic had voted for him. And all that's really, really fun. A great tribal there as well. So because that for me, it is my pick here. Next for David vs. Goliath, and this one's not that close. I mean, again, there are good episodes here. The Chicken is Flown the Coop, the Jessica Pete blindside's pretty good. You get Time to Bring About the Charm Pop Clips. The Natalia vote off is pretty fun. Jackets and Eggs, Angelina Wine Natalie's jacket, that's really fun. Breath First Search, the Dan vote off with him getting the idol nullifier played on him, that's pretty good. But for me, there's no question, it's episode 8. You get what you give. The John Hennigan blindside, which to me is still an all-time great vote off, one of the best vote offs in modern Survivor in my eyes. And all the scrambling that led up to that is still fantastic TV as well. And again, all the scrambling that led up to that is great TV. But also having Nick find the vote steal throughout this episode is also good. So again, there's a lot of good little things in this episode that also culminates in this massive vote off. So because that's my pick. Next for Edge of Extinction, and really for me, I mean, this one's not particularly close. I think the only episodes that were kind of in consideration were the Aubrey vote off, episode 5, which again is pretty fun. I mean, episode 8 is the Julia vote off, which is this really big tribal. So for me, again, it's definitively the finale. I saw the $1 million. This episode that essentially encapsulates the entire season in one singular episode. Chris returning to the game and then ends up playing almost as well as he could have in the route to the end. Him successfully getting Lauren to play an idol on him at 6. Final 5 tribal, he plays the idol on himself successfully. And along with that fact, we get this fake idol train that's really funny to watch as well. And in Final 4, he gives up immunity, the face off against Rick Devens. All this really, really fun series of events here. So because that becomes an easy pick for me. Next for IOI, and again, there's a couple solid episodes, particularly the episodes right before the merge, right before everything goes downhill. Talking about Buttercup is this great Jason Linden vote off that is really the only time across the entire season that Tommy doesn't get his way. Episode 7 is this great vote off where Kelly uses her idol and gives it to Dean so that he takes out Jack. That's really fun, though again, for me, the definitive answer here is the finale. Mama, Look at Me Now, which is a great episode. Again, every step of the way, it's really fun. I mean, while people didn't like Janet getting nullified out of the game, I do feel like that was still an interesting downfall for her there. Along with that, we do get this great idol search at the Final 5 between Tommy and Dean. That's pretty fun. Final 4, we have Nora turning on Lauren and Tommy being able to convince her to take him to the end, which is pretty insane. And then Final Tribal is fantastic, where we get a lot of bickering between the three. It ends up being really fun as well. Again, like to me, this is just a fantastic episode through and through. And because that for me is my pick for IOI. Next for Winners at War. And I mean, again, there's not much of a debate here. Again, there are other good episodes. And Out for Blood, the Ethan boot is a pretty fun vote off. Quick on the Draw, the episode where Sandra idles herself out of the game, is pretty great. Friendly Fire, the Kim vote off, I thought was a pretty fun episode. The finale is pretty good as well. This eventual coronation for Tony, though for me, again, the definitive answer is This Is Extortion. The episode where Tony blindsides Sophie, but even beyond that, it is really just an episode all of Tony, where Tony gets extorted and through that is able to get people to give him fire tokens. We get to the immunity challenge where he does eventually win immunity as well. He also finds an idol in this episode. He pulls off one of the most impressive moves in Survivor history of a 4-3-2 against a person with an idol in their pocket, that through that person's eventual vote off, he's able to really solidify his place in the power structure, being able to take her spot in the power structure. Again, like all that, fantastic. All really fun to watch, especially with Tony being the one in the center of all of it. So because that is easily my pick here. Next up for 41, and to me, there were two big considerations for this season, where I think for a lot of people, it would be the Shan boot. And the Shan boot is very good. Obviously, this is a major turning point for the season. However, for me personally, I'm going to go with episode 7. There's going to be Blood. Part 2 of the Merge episode, where here we obviously get the eventual Hourglass decision, which again is very controversial, obviously, though I do think it made for good TV. Again, this eventual vote off is really insane, where with Evie being the only one eligible from the minority to be taken out, and Xander having an idol and pretending to be willing to play it on her, again, it leads this great tribal council to where we get the knowledge is power reveal, and And the reveal that Xander had passed his idol off, and that's great TV. We then get a lot of scrambling at Tribal, and this last second plan to put the votes on Sydney comes together. And we have Sydney using her shot in the dark in a position if she didn't, she would have stayed in the game. Well, also we have the idol not even getting played on Evie by the end of it. I mean, really, this is an all-time great vote off in my eyes. I mean, this is probably one of the best tribal councils in Survivor history, because that is my pick for 41. Now for 42, and again, there are definitely some considerations. I think the last few episodes were pretty strong. Episode 11, the Drea vote off with Knowledge is Power again, that was pretty good. Episode 12, the eventual Omer blindside, was really great. However, I'm going to go with episode 3, Go for the Gusto, the episode where Jenny Kim gets taken out, and one of the craziest tribals in Survivor history, especially pre-merge tribals. Mind you, almost entirely perpetuated by twists, but it still led to fun TV. Again, Jenny finally having the numbers, but her allies not being able to vote. They're being taken out with Daniel deciding to flip, though at the same time Daniel blows up his own game along with Chanel's game, and that's really fun as well. So again, there's a lot of great stuff here, so it's my pick for this. Now for 43, and again, I mean, this one wasn't that close. I mean, episode 6, Mergatory, where Ellie goes home, that's pretty good, though. I mean, the answer is episode 12, Telenovela, the episode where Cody gets blindsided out of the game and Jesse steals the idol from him, and really just, again, another really insane move. One of the most impressive moves in Survivor history. Again, not necessarily the best, as again, doesn't work out for him, but again, the level of difficulty of this move and seeing Jesse pull it off of him, stealing the idol from Cody, playing it on Owen to get Carla to flush her own idol, while also Jesse having an idol for the following round, and also Jesse now essentially being guaranteed to win if he gets to the end, also getting rid of his biggest competition if he were to get to the end. Again, all of it being a very impressive move, and to see it play out on this episode was really great, and that's why it's my pick here. But now for Survivor 44, which ends up being a very difficult season for me to pick a favorite episode from. I feel like it's a season that, despite its bevy of twists and advantages, kind of feels pretty baseline throughout the entire run, where it doesn't feel like there are these like massive highs throughout the season that really stand out here. And because of that, it makes it very difficult to pick a favorite episode. Where there are episodes like I'm Felicia, episode 4, that ends up being a really fun one involving the eventual Sarah blindside and it's like bickering between Jam and Carolyn and Josh playing his idol. But overall, I feel like it's an episode that does largely fit into the overall issues with the season. It's heavy focus on advantages and twists. Well, episode 5 kind of has the opposite issue, where it is a genuinely great episode, one filled with great character moments and doesn't heavily focus on advantages or twists. However, it's also an episode that doesn't end with an elimination. Episode 8, Don't Get Cocky Kid, is another episode that really stood out to me as this one that has this really fun blindside of Danny idling Brandon out of the game, but also having the first normal round of gameplay in a while. The other thing that really harms this one to me is the fact that half the episode is devoted to the immunity challenge. So really, the episode I'm going to pick here ends up being episode 11, I'm Not Worthy, an episode that ends up being a pretty normal episode through and through. Again, the focus on twists and advantages really isn't there in this episode, but it's an episode that has the eventual Danny blindside, one where we do have Carolyn playing her idol on Carson, which is a notable moment. We even start the episode with Carolyn being upset over the Fran Evo, and that's interesting content as well. And really seeing the Tikas having to scramble here in a position where this is kind of their final round before they can fully take control of the game ends up being interesting to see as well. And overall, I think it's a very strong episode. That's why I went with it here. But there we go. I mean, that's my favorite episode from every season of Survivor US. Moving forward, obviously, just expect more Survivor, Big Brother, other reality TV, other random videos down the road. But for now, that is the video. Thank you for watching.